Shalom from Jerusalem, and today we're talking about Parsha Shemini. Parsha Shemini talks about kosher animals, and today we're going to be talking about spiritual parts of and reasons for eating kosher food. So when people hear about us not eating pork, a lot of times people say, well, we know why you're not eating pork, because in ancient times it was hard to keep the pork. It would get bad very fast, and you can have a pork poisoning. But today we have the refrigerators, and therefore those reasons are not apply anymore. Torah tells us that for every mitzvah that we have, there are 70 aspects of the mitzvah. And I'm not even arguing with these people. I said, you're absolutely right. And perhaps you found one of the reasons why we shouldn't eat pork, but now give me another 69, and then we're going to be talking about it. So today I want to suggest another reason that the Torah tells us why we should not eat not kosher food, and this reason is found in our weekly portion Shemini, and it's chapter 11 and the paragraph 43. The Torah tells us the following things. It says, "Lo titamu bahem v'nitmatem bahem." So when it talks about eating not kosher food, the translation is, "Do not make yourself abominable by means of these teeming things. Do not contaminate yourself through them, lest you become contaminated through them." Now, let me ask you a question. Why do we need the repetition? Again, do not contaminate yourself through them, lest you become contaminated through them. If you tell me that I do not contaminate yourself, of course I'll become contaminated. If you want to say that, don't become contaminated by them, so you don't need the first part, telling me don't contaminate. It's like total repetition. There is no repetitions in Torah. But if we again look at Hebrew, we'll find something unusual. Remember, Hebrew says, "Lo tetamu b'hem v'nitmahem b'am." The way the word for contamination, spiritual contamination, is tameh, and the word tameh is usually spelled with the letter aleph, and that's true in the word tetamu. Has aleph. But when it talks about nitmatem bahem, the least you become contaminated, the aleph is missing. And that's an unusual, very unusual spelling. And our rabbis point out and says the Torah hints here into effect, actually, what's going to happen. Remember, aleph is the first letter representing one, it's representing oneness of God. And so the Torah is hinting us, telling us rabbis, that by eating non-kosher food, the aleph, the oneness of God, the perception of oneness is going to be missing. So that's what the reason the Torah tells us that you should not eat the non-kosher food, because you would not be able to elevate, and we'll talk about it in a minute, the spiritual energy of non-kosher food, and therefore it will bring you down. You will be missing. Your body would not be open for really high spirituality. So you see, what happens when it comes to the whole food chain in Torah, Kabbalah tells us that it has two terms. There's a term of vessel, it's called kli, and there's or, which is light. So vessel and light, both spiritual things, of course. But what the Kabbalah tells us is that in the beginning of the creation, the things that were created first have more light, more intense light, because they're closer to the creation, and have simpler kli. And actually, one of the reasons why things are frozen, so to speak, the stones are frozen, is because they have so much inner light that the simple kli, the simple vessel, cannot express this light. So the comparison is given a person who is frozen with emotion. It's like so overwhelmed with emotion, it's frozen, but he filled with emotion, just doesn't know to express it. So in a sense, the stones are so filled with God's light. They just can't express all the light. And of course, you know, when you today hear about uranium and how much is energy trapped inside the uranium, for example, you understand how much spiritual energy, even more, trapped in the physical matter, even if it's stones and so on. But as the evolution, and Torah talks about evolution of kli, of vessels, right? You know, there's a more and more sophisticated thing created later and later. So evolution is really, as we said, is a vessel, but the spiritual light diminishes because it's further from creation. So the grass, for example, have more intense spiritual light than the chicken. The chicken has less light and is more sophisticated kli. So what happens when the chicken, for example, eats the grass, that the spiritual spark of the grass gets into the higher, more sophisticated vessel, and it, so to speak, has more ability. And more ability means more creativity, and therefore it enjoys this process. Now, the chicken, of course, then can be eaten by us. And when a Jew eats chicken, and especially if it's Shabbat, it's you know, you do it with a blessing, then the spark of the chicken soul, gets inside the human being, and it's a maximum possibility. So our chicken that we eat on Shabbat, with a, you know, kosher chicken, is the happiest chicken in the world, because now its spark, its spiritual spark, has access to the magnificent kli and can do maximum. And that's why it's also, our sages say that the food hates the sinners. And why that happens? Because, you know, this poor chicken, when person eats it not appropriately and then start doing all kinds of bad things, the chicken says, listen, before at least I was a chicken, I wasn't doing anything bad, but now my energy has to turn into something bad, so it really, really doesn't like it. And so the story goes again of the Chinese master who is teaching the student a spiritual art, and he looks in the aquarium with fish for 30 seconds very intensely, and then all of a sudden what happens is that the eyes of the fish become Chinese, and the student's fascinated and says, wow, what it is? And the master says, this is a power of concentration. And the student says, can I try it? And master says, of course. So the student look at the fish intensely for 30 seconds, and after 30 seconds the students start going. So you see, what happens is that, you know, when you engage with something, either you pull it towards your level or it will push you down. And that's exactly what's happening with kosher and not kosher food. When we eat kosher food, when we eat it properly, we can elevate the spark, and when we don't, then, you know, we are reduced to the level of this food. We lose spirituality, increase materiality, we don't have access for this kind of very high spiritual energies. That's, of course, part of it. Another part has to do with even higher concept. I just mentioned it very briefly, called transmigration of the souls, that the souls of people who don't live a really holy life can be trapped in the animals, and of course the non-kosher animals got not so kosher people. So, you know, by eating non-kosher food, you can pick up some spiritualities that you really don't want inside yourself as well. So there is a number of spiritual reasons, and so I like to finish by saying there is a good news and there is a bad news. And the good news, it says when Mashiach comes, that the pork, the pig, would become kosher. That's really good news. But the bad news is that people who likes pork and eat pork would not live until such time. So, and I want to wish everybody great Shabbos, and I want everybody to learn to understand how to purify ourselves so we can really reach our maximum potential.